here's my review of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1 finale. And the reason why this is a full-length video, not a short, is because, one, I got my TikTok back in the time for this, even when the show was already airing and I already started doing the short reviews. But, and another reason is because there's a lot of stuff I have to say about this episode. And as for the show as a whole, I thought it was great. Like I said, I've said many times in almost every single review, I don't understand why people were hating on this show before it even came out. And then it comes out and it's really good. But I will say, in fact, this I think even proves how good the show is, that one of my main problems with this episode in particular is a lot of it just feels like setup for upcoming seasons. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff in this episode. And like I said, this episode is good. We get to see where Strange was coming from in the first episode, and having Norman basically start this super reactor. And Norman, I really love Norman in this whole show. He's great. And we get to see that the spider came from basically the future, which kind of doesn't make any sense if you actually think about it. I mean, time travel and multiverse stuff never really makes sense. But, I mean, hey, it was cool to see, but the show is great, so I mean, I'm letting it slide. And I think that this episode is, and as well as just this entire show, is filled with several emotional moments. There's a great scene of Spider-Man and Peter just talking, and I love it. And at the end of the day, it's characters that matter in a story. Yes, the plot is very important, obviously. But if you don't care about the characters, then what's the point, And that's one thing that makes Spider-Man such a strong character, is just his relatability. And I also just really like Doctor Strange in this episode. And this episode was great. So now let me get on to, like I said, all the stuff is still good, but all the stuff just feels like a lot of setup. Also, I love seeing more Daredevil. It just makes me even more excited for his show coming out next month. And yeah, I'm very excited. And it was just really cool to see just the cool acrobatic stuff with him. And the stuff he also, I think it was with, I don't really know what superhero it was that he was with at the end when we see him run away. If anyone knows, tell me in the comments below. But that part was really cool. And then we see Lonnie Lincoln turn into Tombstone, seeing his hands become more, like cement. Tombstone is a Spider-Man villain where I'm not nearly as familiar with, so I don't really know the full extent of his powers. But that part was really cool. And we see more of Nico basically doing this cool ritual to communicate with her mother, and who's dead. And I mean, I think that's very fascinating. I think I've really enjoyed Nico in this entire show. And like I said, that's one thing whenever it comes to animated shows, is because, of course, it takes so long. It's like, I want to see more of it. Give it to me now. But I'm sure it's probably not going to come out till next year. Which, oh well, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, Nico was great. And like I said, a lot of the stuff just feels like a bunch of character moments. That's why when there's so much that happens in this finale, none of it feels completely fulfilling as it could be. It doesn't feel like every single character maybe gets their time to shine, even though I still think each character did get a good time, a good spot to shine, but just not as good as it could have been. And we see Doctor Octopus working on his new legs, his new arms in his cell, which also in this one he's going to have 8 mechanical arms instead of the normal 4. So then he would have 12 arms in total. But I mean, hey, Doctor Octopus, I think it was a highlight of this show. I loved his design. I loved his character. And I love just how just the showing of he's a genius. I loved that part. He was one of the best characters in this show. But the big reveal was, of course, we're seeing that, this part was just kind of blew my mind, and I couldn't really believe it. We see Richard Parker is still alive, and Peter Parker's dad, and that just, that's I feel like they've never really done that in the movie. Well, they did that in the Amazing Spider-Man where we see his parents, but then, of course, they get killed, but, we don't. It is interesting, the idea of his dad's alive in jail, and I assume Peter does not know this at all. And I'm very curious where they're going to go with this. I'm very intrigued. Like I said, a lot of this is setup, but it's good setup because even though it doesn't feel like there's as much story here as many of it is unfinished story, it's interesting. It hooks you and you care. So I still want to see more of this. And the final swing I thought was just great. I mean, the colors were gorgeous. I thought it was just fantastic. And this was just a great show. So yeah, this show I think exceeded my expectations, even though I already had high expectations. Many people were hating on the show. I was excited about it. I thought it looked good. I thought all the trailers looked good, and I thought it was even better than I thought it was. It was even better than I thought it was gonna be. And yeah, and it just leaves me just more excited. I want to see season 2. I just want to see more of these characters. I'm really curious what they're gonna do with Peter's dad. I think with Richard, and it just leaves me wanting more. And I feel like that's what a good show should do, or any good piece of media, where you read it and you're like, oh, I just want more, but you still feel satisfied even if you didn't get it. But yeah, this was a great show, a great season finale. And yeah, just tell me what you guys thought. What did you guys think of this episode? And what did you think of the series as a whole? So yeah, but overall, I thought this show was great.